So in this video, I wanted to address a lot of things have been happening with a YouTuber that I follow when he went to see the Batman, and I haven't seen the Batman. I'd like to see it at some point, but I haven't yet. Now he enjoyed the movie. He had a few things to say about it. Obviously, Twitter rolled with certain negatives that he had with it, and just turned it into something that it really shouldn't have been. I see this a lot lately with in regards to like the Twitterverse. A lot of the time, people will reach so far they've lost sight of their own hand with how much they're reaching. And I want to address that because I've been obviously watching a lot of their content. So what he stated, this is Ryan Kinnell, on YouTube, and in his review of, again, the Batman, really enjoyed it. Couple of things was on the nose, and I completely understand where he's coming from with this. He stated basically that there is two good white people within this film, and that's Bruce and Alfred. The majority of good people, of people of colour. So you had Jim Gordon, who's black. You had Catwoman, who is coloured, and the mayor, who's also coloured. A lot of all the bad guys were white, white privileged men, and this is even stated by Catwoman in the movie. She even states, these white privileged folk. The white part didn't really need to be said. Like, I think it's just kind of very jarring for someone to say that. And again, that would put me off like watching it, because again, no, I'm white, so therefore I say it in my colour as a in malice is very jarring. If you said that about any other colour, you would be deemed a massive racist, and I think it's on the nose, it's jarring. What Ryan was stating is very popular within Hollywood at the moment to kind of state, oh, white folk bad, people of colour good, and kind of virtue signal that. And he was stating that, and it's understandable that it's very mild, but a lot of people on Twitter, again, Twitter's not real life, people are silly, basically saying that as a racist, that giving him death threats and things like that. And I think it's ridiculous that there's actually people out there that can voice that opinion or reach that far to not actually understand that he enjoyed the film, he enjoyed the acting from the people that you would say that is racist against. He just found it on the nose, and very much Hollywood kind of trying to appeal to a certain audience by outlining these things. But again, people will try and twist and try and turn something that was one negative that he had into something extreme when it's not. I think people are easily offended by something they shouldn't be offended by. And I think that Hollywood and a lot of shows or movies are going that way, where they're blatantly putting a race swap, or they're doing something to show that they are trying to appease a certain audience. They're trying to get awards for adding inclusivity and diversity, and I want to go into that these 2 points, inclusivity and diversity, together make no sense. They are contradictory to each other. And I want to go into this video today to say why. So, I believe that it isn't a bad thing to have inclusion within your media. Giving people an opportunity to portray a certain person isn't a bad thing, especially if they're really good at it. Recently, obviously, Ian McKellen was talking about this, that he doesn't want to be sidelined to roles that are just for gay people because he's gay. And this is very prominent because he played Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings movie trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy. And in no way, shape or form was sexuality addressed. It wasn't something that was part of the character. He was acting, and he stated this to an article, that they are acting, they're playing a role. And I think people should have that opportunity, regardless of who they are. They should be included with the process of media that they're in. I think when it comes to story, I think it should make sense. Again, colour should make sense, as well as sexuality, gender and things like that. They should all make sense within the medium. Diversity, again, is a contradiction of that. It's putting things in boxes and ticking them boxes. So diversity is basically saying that you have to have a certain gender in it. You have to have a certain race in it. You have to have a certain sexuality in it, and so you have a diversity. But again, it's segregating things off in sake of the story. It's downgrading everything for virtue, for signalling we've got diversity within our cast or our story. Okay, does that really help the story? Inclusion is basically about making it so the story involves these certain aspects. So involves the certain genders, involves a certain races, involves a certain sexualities. But diversity is just kind of putting them in there for no reason. And again, it's a stark contrast to one another. And to do that, you are literally destroying the story. And there's a lot of stories there's a lot of things recently in media that have done that. They've put things in for the sake of diversity. One example I can give is the Star Wars sequel trilogy. They didn't really have a story, and that's because, and I'll go into this in depth in another video, but they didn't have an end goal. They had a starting point, and then basically was like, let's see how it goes. And that's what they did. What they did do, though, is put diversity into it. Just appeal to, again, a certain audience that wants them to tick that box. So you have female, you have a female protagonist to show, women empowerment, to show that, we're here for women being included. Again, they put a black person in there again to say, we see that, people of colour are important, so this is a good guy within our story. Now, going forward, they really didn't look into the characters that they was building there. they could have made them 10 times better. And even, like, give me 5 minutes and I'll be able to make a better storyline for both Rey and Finn within them films. Because their stories were lackluster. They had no substance, and that's because they were put in there, for the sake of diversity and not for the story. The story wasn't developed upon, and that's why, it had a lot of inconsistencies. You had the first film that started off, but obviously it didn't have an end goal. There wasn't really, anything going forward. They was making it up as they go along, and that's a very common thing at the moment within media that people do. They make it up as go along instead of having everything mapped out and then filming it, changing things where they can, as long as they get from A to B to C. That's how a good story is created. And you see a lot of good stories that are like that. The story has been, they have an end and a start. They have a start and an end. But then you get stories that kind of fluctuate because they have a start and they'll be developing the ending throughout the story. That doesn't work because then you have inconsistencies. And that's what we saw with the Star Wars trilogy, where when Rian Johnson picked up the film for the sequel, he completely derailed everything. And made it kind of his own. And then he was scrapped for the third installment, which then, again, had a change of trajectory. And therefore you get this disconjointed trilogy that have no substance, that have no through line. And these characters are kind of just there, floating. And that's what's really bad. With doing that, with just putting things in for the sake of diversity, against the plot, against the story. The main thing was how they kind of did John Boyega's character Finn rotten. Because people were actually excited to see that character. They was very interested. Fans and non-fans alike were very interested to see where's this character going. And ultimately, it kind of went nowhere. And that's very, very jarring to see that character went nowhere. Again, there was sloshing about what she was. And, they said something at the end, kind of going, she's Palpatine, we'll stick with that. Spoilers if you haven't seen the sequels. And then worked with that. But again, it had no substance because there wasn't you did that on the last film. So there wasn't any character development on that aspect. It was just kind of shoehorned in and then shipped out. And so it has no substance. Whatever her name is there. She's in this film. As well as Finn, as well as any other characters. They had no backstory, they had no clear through line. Now let me explain how they could have gone about, the characters and making these characters believable and great to the story. Rey should have been established from the beginning. We should have known who she was, but she shouldn't have known. The audience should have known something that the character didn't. And obviously through that, they'll work out who they are and it would make sense to us and seeing her journey. And that would give more substance to the character, as well as working on that side of it, that she was this certain person, and the audience had to see where the character was going to go with it. That would have been amazing to see. You would have had her, I think we should have seen her from not being this badass chick that could do everything, but to seeing her from this fish out of water character that doesn't know what universe she's kind of in because she's been abandoned on this planet, to kind of being jettisoned into this universe and having to feel her way through it. She shouldn't have been able to defeat a trained Jedi. And I think she should have learned, throughout the trilogy to become, an amazing, protagonist. I think she should have, battled with being a fish out of water. She should have then battled with her lineage and who she is, and finding out who she is. Pressing on that light and dark, quite early on. Should I, follow in my granddad's footsteps, or should I, set a new path? That would have been cool to see. The audience would have, really accepted that as her character. It would have given her a backstory, it would have given her a character development, and it would have been great seeing going forward. Finn, I think, shouldn't have been a stormtrooper. If you're going with the matter of fact that it's force sensitive and things like that, I think he should have been a Jedi. He should have trained with Luke. He should have been Kylo Ren / Ben's friend. And so therefore, when they go to Jakku, they're looking for Palpatine. They're going to kill her instead of this whole trying to figure out where this MacGuffin is to find Luke, which is silly. I think Luke shouldn't have been this person that's failed. I think he should have been this person that is kind of the driving force, because people see Luke as a driving force, and that's what really people disliked about the second one, is that he wasn't really a driving force. He was just, again, in it. So yeah, I think he should have been a driving force for the film, kind of a mentor to everyone. The first film should have seen him saving Finn and Rey. I think Finn was a silly name because that was to do with his stormtrooper, so maybe call, I don't know, John. Because there's a John Doe, because we don't have a name for him. He should have saved John and Rey from, not Ben, because I didn't know who Ben was. They should have used legends and called him Jason, and that would have made sense because Jason went to the dark side. Poe, who had, again, no character development other than he was a pilot. He could be Jason's brother. They could have a sister again, they could have introduced more characters, and that could be to do with the politics side. Snoke shouldn't have been part of this new empire. I think there shouldn't have been an empire. I think they should have showed that Leia is a very important character and is able to bring back the Republic and have it stabilize. I think Snoke should have been kind of like a Republic, I don't know, it's part of the Republic in some way, but also someone who's trying to sabotage, a saboteur, kind of like a mole in the company, but a very, very important one, who's kind of influencing Jason to do the things that, Snoke wants. Maybe wiping out, this potential threat that's Rey Palpatine and any remnants of the Empire that could basically uncover who he is. Maybe he worked for the Empire and he's kind of infiltrating the Republic to turn it back into the Empire for himself. That would have been cool to see. Again, the betrayal from Snoke with the Empire and things like that, and working out that kind of political side, as well as working out the Fu story where Jason is trying to kill Rey, John's trying to save her. She then obviously, gets trained up, she then has to battle that people know has a Palpatine and work out how to deal with that. And that would have been great to see, because we didn't get to see that with Luke or Leia. But people now would know that they are Skywalkers and that they are related to Darth Vader, who kind of, was the Emperor's second-hand man and did a lot of bad things. So, Luke had a lot of things to kind of live up to, as well as kind of restore for his family's name. Seeing that, with the Rey character would have been great to see. Seeing John as kind of like a Jedi, trying to stop his friend, as well as, maybe falling for Rey and trying to look after her, as a fellow Jedi, and, being there for her when she may have problems and things like that. People would love to see that, because it shows the new age of the Jedi Order. It shows the new age of the Republic, and how there is still, corruption seeding in there, and how to, navigate that. And that would have been great to see. That would have been the extension from the original, and it would have worked. But they didn't. Again, lackluster. I got obviously gone off on a tangent there, but that's what it seems to be, is that media shoves things for diversity into their products. It's not inclusion. Inclusion, again, is building the story around these characters. Building a story around so it includes people. And so that actors and, actors or writers or whatever can show that their world building is rich and, interesting. That has been done correctly. There has been like race swaps and gender swaps and things like that have been done correctly, because the story was enjoyable. It was great to see. Again, going back to Ryan's statement on the Batman, he really enjoyed it. He really enjoyed the characters in it. He didn't say he didn't dislike any of the people of colour or anything like that. What he stated was it was on the nose with how they portrayed everyone who's white is bad, apart from these two people, and then everyone who's good is coloured. And it was on the nose, and, it really showed kind of what audience they were looking for. Even if not like overly, but to a point, they would still want to tick them boxes, and they did that to appease, again, a certain audience that wants them to tick them boxes. So for people to reach and say, this guy's racist, this guy's this, is very, very silly and very, very simple-minded to go that far. He didn't dislike any race that was in this film. He's not saying that, it's bad that there was black people that were good. He's not saying that. He's saying that it was on the nose for Hollywood, for this film to do that. But that seems like the signs of, today's age of Hollywood, which they're trying to appease and tick boxes rather than tell a good story. So it can be jarring at times to kind of see that blatant obviousness. And we've seen that again, in other mediums recently. So that's my, two benefit into it. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you want, and have a good day.